Today we will discuss about the chemical bonding. After studying this lecture, you shall be able to know what is chemical bond, understand ionic bond and its properties, know what is covalent bond and its properties, understand coordinate bond and its properties. What is chemical bond? Chemical bond is defined as a force which binds the atom together in a molecule. On the basis of the strength of chemical bond are of mainly two types. First, strong force, another weak forces. Strong forces categorize ionic bond, covalent bond and coordinate bond, whereas weak forces involve hydrogen bonding and van der Waals forces. Now, first we discuss what is ionic bond or electrovalent bond and how it is formed. The electrostatic force of attraction which holds the two oppositely charged ions together is called ionic bond. For example, metal such as sodium loses electron to become positive ion, whereas non-metal such as chlorine accept electron to become a negative ion. So, the metal that gives electron is called donor and non-metal that accept electron is called acceptor. A chemical bond is formed between two atoms by complete transference of one or more electrons from one atom to another, as a result of which the atom attains nearest inert gas configuration. Formation of ionic bond. Ionic bond occurs between the metals and non-metals because the metals have only few electrons in its outermost shell. Thus, it likes to give away these electrons to achieve the noble gas configuration and satisfy the octet rule. The number of electrons a metal loses in the number of positively charged it achieves to form the ionic bond. On the other hand, to fulfill the octet rule, non-metals accept the electrons and charge negatively. The number of electrons it accepts is the number of negative charge it gains. As a result, the electrostatic force occurs between the two oppositely and equal charged atoms to form an ionic bond. Let us consider an example of sodium chloride. The electronic configuration of sodium is 2, 8, 1, whereas chlorine is 2, 8, 7. Means chlorine required 1 electron to complete its octet and sodium lose 1 electron to complete its octet. So, sodium loses 1 electron to get positively charged and chlorine accepts 1 electron to achieve a negative charge. So, an electrostatic force holds these atoms together in a crystallographic lattice. Thus, sodium chloride is formed. Properties of the ionic bond. Ionic compounds have boiling and melting point as they are very strong and require a lot of energy to break. The electrostatic force of attraction between the positively charged ions lead the formation of ions. Ionic compounds form crystals. These compounds are brittle and break into small pieces easily. Electrovalent compounds usually dissolve in water and are insoluble in solvents like oil, petrol, kerosene, etc. Ionic compounds do not conduct electricity in the solid state, but they do conduct electricity in the molten state. In comparison to molecular compounds, ionic compounds have higher enthalpies of fusion and vaporization. Now, we will discuss covalent bond. A covalent bond is a chemical bond that involves the sharing of the electron pairs between two atoms. These electron pairs are known as bonding electron pairs, and they share these electrons to form covalent bond. This bonding is primarily formed between nonmetals. However, it can also be observed between the nonmetals and metals. Let us take an example of methane to explain the covalent bond. A most common compound, methane, contains covalent bond where 4 hydrogen covalently bonded with 1 carbon center. Carbon has 4 valence electrons, half of an octet. One of the atom of carbon combines with 4 atoms of hydrogen to make 1 molecule of methane. All the hydrogen atoms have only 1 electron in their outermost shell, and carbon has 4. So, carbon shares each of its 4 electrons with the one of the carbon. This is the way carbon now has complete a octet, and all the 4 hydrogen atoms have a complete duplet. Now we discuss the properties of covalent bond. If the normal valence of an atom is satisfied by sharing a single electron pair between atoms, the atoms may share more than one electron pair between them. Some of the properties of the covalent bonds are: covalent bonding does not result in the formation of new electrons. The bond pairs only pairs them. They are very powerful chemical bonds that exist between atoms. A covalent bond normally contains the energy of about 80 kilocalories per mole. A covalent bond rarely breaks spontaneously after it is formed. Covalent bonds are directional, where the atoms that are bonded showcase specific orientation relative to each other. Most compounds having covalent bond exhibit relatively low melting points and boiling points. Compounds with covalent bond usually have lower enthalpies of vaporization and fusion. Compounds formed by the covalent bonding do not conduct electricity due to lack of free electrons. Types of covalent bond. Depending upon the way in which two atomic orbitals overlap with each other, two types of covalent bonds are formed. These are sigma and pi bond. Sigma bond. The bond which is formed by the head-to-head or internuclear axis overlapping of the atomic orbitals is known as sigma bond. Pi bond. The bond which is formed by the sidewise or lateral overlapping of the atomic orbitals is known as pi bond. Now, let us see the difference between sigma and pi bond. Sigma bond, it is formed by the head-to-head or internuclear axis overlapping of atomic orbitals, whereas in pi bond, it is formed by the sidewise or lateral overlapping of the atomic orbitals. Sigma bond is formed by the overlapping of SS, sp or pp atomic orbitals along internuclear axis, whereas pi bond it is formed by the lateral overlapping of pp atomic orbitals. Sigma bond is a stronger bond because the extent of overlapping is large, whereas in pi bond is a weaker bond because the extent of overlapping is comparatively small. In the sigma bond, the energy is 90 to 110 kilocalorie per mole, whereas in pi bond, the bond energy is 60 to 65 calorie per mole. What is the difference between ionic and covalent bond? Covalent bond is formed between two similar electronegative nonmetals, whereas ionic bond is formed between a metal and nonmetal. Covalent bond formed from the covalent bonding having a definite shape, whereas ionic bonds have no definite shape. In covalent bond, melting point is low, whereas in ionic bond, the melting points are high. Covalent bond considers low polarity compounds, whereas ionic bond having molecules have high polarity. Covalent bonds are in liquid or gaseous state at room temperature, whereas at room temperature the ionic bonds have solid state. Examples of covalent bonds are methane, hydrochloric acid, etc., whereas sodium chloride and sulfuric acid are the examples of the ionic bond. Now we will discuss what is coordinate bond. Coordinate bond is formed when the shared pair of the electrons comes only from one atom. There is no mutual sharing of electrons takes place. The one that donates electrons is called the donor atom and other is the acceptor. The bond is also called as dative bond. Bond is represented by the arrow pointed from the donor to acceptor. Bond has some polar characteristic. It is also called as a dative or semipolar bond or co-ionic bond. Let us see the example how the coordinate bond is formed. When the ammonium ion react with the hydronium ion, then nitrogen have a lone pair. They donates the lone pair towards the hydrogen. So donor is nitrogen and acceptor is hydrogen. Then a bond is formed which is called coordinate bond between ammonium ion. On the basis of our presentation, we have to solve some practice questions. That is, explain ionic bond with suitable example. Discuss the properties of the ionic bond. Explain covalent bond with suitable example. Explain the difference between sigma and pi bond. Explain the difference between ionic and covalent bond. And explain the coordinate bond with suitable example. These are the image sources which is utilized in our PPT. These are the references. Thank you.